Hi again. I don't know what happened, but it ended my my tutorial there, so I'm having to start all over again. And now my lighting is weird, but sorry. So, oh, well, that's a little bit better. So, let's try this again. This is the Crafting with Opal program, and I'm Opal Mitchell, and I work for the Central Arkansas Library System, and I work at the Nixon branch in Jacksonville. So anyway, this is the Crafting with Opal program I do on Thursday nights at 7, and we're doing a tote bag tutorial tonight. So sorry that I lost everyone. Hopefully you'll find me again here in a moment. I don't know what went wrong. I went to reverse the camera and then I lost my feed. So here's take 2. So I'm going to try this one more time. I'm going to try to reverse my camera without losing y'all. So hang on just a second. Okay, yay. I did not lose y'all. Okay. So, okay. Hopefully. I'm a little unorganized because of that. So I'm going to move some things out of the way. It's a good idea to wash and iron your items or your fabric before you get started. I am working with some Harry Potter fabric that we got for the library for some sewing project at one point. We didn't use it all, so I thought what a fun fabric to use to make a bag. And we are going to be doing for the pieces that we're cutting out, we're going to cut out 2 pieces that are going to be for one side of the bag that are 13.5 by 14, and then 2 more pieces, which my other 2 pieces are going to be made out of this fabric, just something that kind of coordinates. It can be a solid color, it doesn't have to be another pattern. That also are going to be cut out to measure 13.5 inches by 14 inches. So we're going to be cutting out 4 different pieces. And then we're also going to be cutting out a long strap for it. And I'm going to be using these pieces to cut out my fabric. The strap is going to be a piece that measures 4 inches wide and 44 inches long. So I'll probably use the same measuring tool for that. Okay, so this is, since it's black fabric, I need to flip this over so y'all can see it better. I know it's going to be dark on that, but it's not going to be as hard to see whenever I'm measuring this. But you do want to watch the direction. If your fabric has print on it, you want to cut it in the direction that you want your fabric to be facing. Of course, I want my writing to go this way, so I'm going to make sure that I'm going to measure this out. Let's see, to work that way, and I need my rotary cutter. And let's see here. It doesn't really say. It's 13.5 by 14. So the 14 is going to be how tall it's going to be, which that's only a ½ an inch difference from the other. If you want to make it an even 13.5 by 13.5, more square shaped, you could do that. It's totally up to you, however you would like to do that. And I feel like this needs to be further away. So I'm going to tilt this and back it up so you guys can see the cutting process a little bit better. And I find using this kind is a lot easier as far as getting the straight lines. This is what you would buy for quilting. And mine's going to be 14 inches tall and 13 inches wide. So at the bottom here is where my numbers start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I want it to be this tall. You don't want to start right at the bottom of your fabric. You want to be kind of close to the fabric, but do not ever assume that that is straight at the bottom, which I can tell it's not. So you want to start a little ways above that to make sure. And you can always mark this if you want to and then cut it out. But I'm going to just go ahead and cut mine out. So I need it 14 inches tall, and my 14 starts up here. Okay, so you can see where I cut it. Alright, and then I need to be 13.5 inches down here. So I'm going to move my fabric over. My 13 is right around here. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to put my straight edge and make sure it's lined up with this straight edge over here. And as you can see how it kind of slants going this direction. So you can tell that this bottom edge is definitely not a straight edge. So don't ever let that fool you into thinking that they've made that straight at the bottom. I'm going to inch it down just a little bit to get the most out of my fabric, because I only have to go over to 13.5 over here. So this is my 13.5 mark. Okay, so there we go. And I'm going to do that. Let's see. I got to make sure that I know where my 14 mark is up here. So did that shift on me a little bit? I think it did. It's not quite straight. I always have trouble on the left hand side where things will move on me. So I'm going to straighten it out just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to get me a marker, a fabric marker here to mark my 14-inch spot. It's right around where some Harry Potter glasses are located. So I'm going to also come back over here and line this up and make sure that I mark. I got it pretty darn close there. So that is my 13.5 mark right there. So I'm going to line this up with the bottom, because this is a straight edge, and I'm going to line it up with my straight edge down here. And I'm going to scoot that over where that blue mark is, and then find where my 14 is here. So I want to go make sure that that all lines up later on whenever I'm cutting those. So now I'm going to go up here. Well, I'm probably going to cut that spot. Alright, so I'm going to mark that again because I did move that a tad bit. Make sure. Okay. Alright, there's my other 14. Okay, so now I want to measure that across. And a great way to do it is also to make sure that your lines line up on either side here, that it's perfectly lined up too, so you can get a straight cut. Let's see. Alright, so there's the top portion. It moved on me. How much did it move? Let's try that again. Hope it didn't move that much. Just try not to block your view of it, but okay. Just a couple of spots didn't cut, but I can get those. Okay. And I do have that little tiny piece right there that came. I'm going to get some scissors and cut that loose. So now that I've got this piece measured out, I can kind of measure out my other ones to be the same. This will be my kind of my template for my other pieces. Alrighty, so I'm going to need another one this size, and I want the fabric to be going the same direction. I could probably go upwards now that I'm thinking about it. So I don't know if I ironed my fabric as well up there. Let's see. Okay. Use that as my template. Make sure it's not going to move around on me too much. Which this method wouldn't necessarily always work real great if you can't see your lines. Let's see. And you want everything to line up. Okay, so I want to come up here. Wish I didn't. I had closed out my rotary cutter there. Okay. I guess I got a little bit of my other fabric, but that's okay. Oops, there went my rotary cutter. Because I put it too close to the edge there. Trying to think. I can slide this down without it moving too much. Oh dear. Trying to get this on camera and knocking things on the floor. Okay. Make sure that's lined up with that. And I'm just going to go all the way across because I'm just going to be cutting off that excess here in a minute anyway. Got some more of that too. This one's a pretty forgiving project for beginners because all of your seams get hidden whenever you're sewing this together. So if you're new to sewing and want to try a fun project when you're first starting out, this is really a great one to get started with, because if you don't end up sewing everything nice and neat, it's not a big deal because you can't really see it because it's all on the inside of the bag. The only seams or stitching you're going to see is in the straps, when you're sewing down your straps, and then also sewing down the top of the bag. So it's very forgiving in that way when you're starting out to learn how to sew. So I do highly recommend this one when you're first starting. And it's also a fun one if you've been sewing a long time. Well, I don't know, you've probably already done something like this if you've been sewing a long time. Okay, so there's my two outside pieces. And then I'm going to do two pieces. This one messes with my eyes a little bit. I like how that kind of messes with me. So, alright, so I'm not gonna use my Harry Potter ones to do this with. I'm just gonna measure it out with this again. Let's see here. It's gonna be, I want it to be 14 inches tall, which I'm just gonna cut a straight edge on this piece because I just want to get this piece off the end anyway, and I just need a straight edge. I'm just going to go all the way down. Of course, I didn't get the very bottom. I always seem to miss something. I'll lift up a little too quick sometimes. Okay, so I got my straight edge, and I'm going to line this up. I need a straight edge on that side too, so this is where I'm only going to cut 13.5 inches down, because this is going to be the bottom. So let's line this up with this right here. And this fabric is kind of stretchy, so it doesn't lay very flat for me. I'm going to have to straighten it up a little bit. So I can already tell the edge moved on me a little bit whenever I was cutting on it. So my 13, and I'm going to go to the 14 mark just because, to make sure I went down far enough. And I'm going to straighten this out a little bit just to make sure it's not off too much. Okay, here. Pull it down here. Actually, I don't think it's going to be too bad. Yeah, that wasn't too bad. Okay, so I want to cut this one in at the, it's going to be 13.5 inches wide. So this is my 13.5 mark right here. And I want to go up to the 14 mark, which is up here. Which I did that again. I made it a little too wide, or I didn't get right up against the rotary cutter there. Well, I guess I got it that time. And now I just have to go across at the 14 mark. Make sure this doesn't shift too much. My 14 mark is right up there. And I'll line it up all the way across here and cut across. And I'm going to, of course, get in front of the camera while I do that in order to keep it. Oh dear. I was cutting into my measuring thing here. My ruler, I cut it. I really kind of gouged it there. There we go. Got rid of that. Alright, so here's one of my pieces. So let's set that off. Got all these little strings. I'm going to move them out of the way. And so, I shift this over. I didn't do a very good job of ironing this before I got started. See all kinds of wrinkles, but I will press it again here in a minute. Okay. So I already got my straight edge here because that's the straight edge I worked with earlier. So I'm going to turn it this way, because that'll be my 14 across, and then I'll just need to go 13.5 down. So, just kind of follow the lines that I was following earlier. I'm going to have this upside down. Let's see here. Okay, so my 13.5 mark is down here. I'm just going to go a little past it. Yeah, That's good. And then turn this again. And line this up with my corner. Okay. This is all moving on me. Actually, in order to be able to see what I'm doing, I'm going to shift this. Okay, so there's my 14. No, it's not going to make it easier. Any easier to do that. I thought it would, but. Yeah, those wrinkles are really messing with me as far as keeping this straight. I thought that would help if I had it draped off on that side, but oh well. That's okay. I'll trim it up a little bit better later. Okay, so on this, it's supposed to be my 14, supposed to be this way, and I'm supposed to have 13 and a half this way. So my half is here. So I'm going to mark that there. And then it's right here. And then we'll cut the straps out. Okay. And the straps, the way that they do it is they have you cut one long continuous piece out and then cut it in half, which you can do it that way, but you don't have to do it that way. It really, I'm going to shift this so it'll be on this side so when I'm cutting it. You really don't have to do it that way. You could do two separate straps if you wanted to. It's just kind of up to you on if you want to do one big piece, because that way when you're sewing it you can sew it all at once. Let's see here, gotta double check my measurements here, make sure that's going to be at the 14, and up here 14's there. Alright. I may trim this down if I end up getting it a little too big, but that's okay. I'd rather be a little too big than not big enough. Okay, and I'll definitely need to iron that fabric since it's not doing the way I want it to do. Alrighty, and I'm going to cut the straps. I don't have enough to do the straps in that other fabric, so I'm going to do it in the Harry Potter fabric. You can decide however you want to do your straps, but in order to get 44 inches, which I'm going to have to see, I don't think, let's see, because this typically, this fabric's only 33 35 across, and I don't think, let's see, the long ways, I might be able to do it that way. Let's see how much fabric I got here. That is 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43. And that's almost 44. I'm not going to worry a whole lot about it. And I would prefer to do the straps in this direction because Gryffindor and Harry Potter will be going long ways up and down the strap, which I would prefer. Because if it was the other way, it would get folded in half and you wouldn't be able to read it. Or you might be able to see the glasses and the lion head there. So I believe that's the way I'd like to do it anyway. And I don't mind if mine's not quite 44 inches. So that's not a big deal to me. So I want it 4 inches by 44 inches. So I'm going to straighten out the very edge of this first, because you don't want this on there because it's not quite straight anyway. So that's about a ½ inch that I'm going to take off my fabric to kind of straighten it out. So I'm going to do that real quick. And like I said, you can have the straps really any length you like. And you can always make longer straps by putting a couple of pieces together. I've done some videos on how to do stuff like that before. Like when I was showing you how to do a lanyard, I showed you kind of how to do that. So I hate that I have all this heavy weight of this fabric hanging off my table here. It's going to play and mess with me trying to do a straight line here. And you can always measure all of this out. Let's see. It needs to be 4 inches wide, so I have a lot to work with. I'm trying to look at the images here, and I'm trying to line it up with my images so that they will get folded the way that I want them to. So, kind of looking at the Harry Potter glasses I'm trying to line them up with the 1 inch mark here. And okay, so I'll have to straighten that edge out again, because when I started lining it up with that kind of messed with everything. Okay, I'm going to scoot it over just a little bit. And see if I can get those glasses lined up in the same way. Mostly around that way. Okay. So most of them are following in about the same spot. So that's how I'm going to make a straight edge. But I need to look at the bottom of my fabric. That's going to shift a little too much on me, because that bottom edge, of course, is not straight. So I have 4 inches, so I'm going to start shifting this direction, because my 6 inch mark is over here, so I can shift over quite a bit. I don't want, let's see, how does the Harry Potter glasses look? Tilt it that way. They're pretty well lined up. Okay, so I mostly want to work with my straight edge here first. Okay, so this is the straight edge I'm going to be working with. And I know that I'm going to be just cutting all the way to the end of this fabric, so I'm not really paying attention to my measurements right now as far as how far down the fabric I go, because I know that that's what I'm going to be doing. So in order to get this top edge straightened again, I'm going to take this straight line that I just did, line it up with my lines on here, and then I'm going to straighten out the top edge there, which it looks pretty darn straight. I'm not going to worry about it then because it looks pretty darn straight. So I'm just going to shift all my fabric up, and I'm going to keep when you're working with a lot of fabric, it makes it kind of awkward. So I'm going to straighten that out and use the edge here to keep all that straight. Guess I am going to have to let some of that fabric fall off the table here because it's not letting me keep it real straight. Alright, and once you put a little weight on it too, it'll shift on you. See, and that's, golly, that was really, okay, I think I'll stay okay. Just feels like my fabric is not wanting to stay straight, even though I did a lot of shifting. It might have moved on me a little bit whenever I was doing that earlier. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Alright, that seems to be staying straight for me. Okay. Okay. Alright, so I'm just cutting all the way down to the end here. Alright, so there's that. Alright, so I'm going to turn my fabric around since I like to cut from this side. And I'm going to be cutting it down the other side. And I'm going to be doing 4 inches wide. So on here, my 4 mark is right there. So I'm going to line this up with my 4-inch mark and line it up all the way down like that. Make sure he was trying to shift just ever so slightly on me. But I did cut most of the way down here, so I'm just going to go ahead and move all my fabric upwards. Try to get that lined up. I'm glad I'm getting that extra piece of fabric out of the way. Alright, so I'm going to line this up again with my 4-inch mark. And it does look like I got a little off right there, but I can go back and straighten that out. Okay. actually, even though I got off a little bit, we're going to be folding it all in half, so even if you don't get them perfectly straight, it's not the end of the world. Okay, so here's my 4 inches again. I did this look like I shifted just a little bit, but I'll straighten it out. Okay, so there's that. So I just got to make sure my very end is, yep, that's straight. And then this end, I'm going to straighten it out a bit too. That looks good. Okay, so there's that piece. Okay, so now we have everything cut out. The only other cutting we're going to be doing is to cut the fabric in half, or the strap in half, once we get it folded and measured the way we wanted. So I'm going to get my iron out and fix this up, because this is not flat and it's going to be hard to work with if I don't. So move that out of the way, and I guess I should make sure that I've done this project so many times that I don't really look at the directions as much as I used to. So let me, okay, yeah, the next thing we'll do is we'll be sewing some of the pieces together, but I'm going to go ahead, oh, where do they do the straps at? Because there's the bag. You got to put your straps together at some point. Do I have these out of order or something? Oh, she does the straps right away. Okay. At the very beginning. Okay. Which, that's pretty easy. Alrighty, so let's make sure that all of our pieces are, make sure that that's going to heat up on for me. And I'm just going to make sure, because this is severely wrinkled, and if you're working with fabric that's not flat when you're doing this project, it makes it really hard to get it looking the way you want it. Let's see. And we will need to get our iron heated up to fold our straps too. So if you want to do your straps while I'm trying to get this part ironed out, let me show you what you're going to be doing for your straps. Okay, to iron this, you're going to fold it in half, like so, all the way down, and you are going to iron it flat in half. Make sure it's lined up. Oh, there's some fuzz. So, and if you did my lanyard project, this is exactly what we were did to do a lanyard. We fold it in half and then we'll fold it again. But the first step is to fold it in half and iron it. The second part is to fold it again in half again and iron it. So okay. So once you get it done in half, then you're going to open it up. And you're going to fold one side inwards to where your fold is at. And then you're also going to take Well, if you want to make it easier, if you want to do one at a time, you can. Just fold it to the inside. You can kind of skip this and do them both at the same time if you can, but just fold it to the inside and iron that down. And then if you turn around, you take the other side and fold it all the way in to where that fold is at. Because you want both of them to be, the edges to be even with each other when you're ironing it down. So okay. Sometimes it's kind of not very easy to do because both sides don't always want to fold in evenly for you when you're doing them both at the same time. But you do want them both to be folded to that crease that's in the middle that you've already created. I'm trying not to get burned my iron the way that I'm placing it. And just keep folding each of the sides into the very center. And if you don't have a really hot iron, sometimes it's hard to do this part, to get the really crisp lines in your fabric. Okay, so once you get that done, we will be actually sewing that down. So make sure your lines are really good. I'm looking at mine, and I got in a bit of a hurry, and this side did not get folded in as far as the other side. So they both did not line up like they were supposed to. So double check that to make sure. Okay, that looks a little bit better. I'm going to hang it over there next to my thing while I do this real quick. Because like I said, if you don't have your fabric nice and flat when you go to piece it together, it does make it difficult getting all the edges lined up. Because I have some corners that keep wanting to turn upwards on me. I think my Harry Potter fabric looks okay. It's just this other fabric is not. It's some of our fabric that we got as donations. And a lot of times that stuff has not been ironed or and it's been folded in weird ways, and so it gets some really strange folding in them sometimes. Okay, so I'll double check my Harry Potter stuff. I think it looks pretty flat. I got them both laying on top of each other. Okay, I think those will do. Okay, so I'm gonna have to load up my sewing machine with some different colored thread because I had worked on a different project before this, and so I have purple thread in my sewing machine right now, so that's not going to work. And you'll also notice this machine is a Brother, but it's a different Brother machine. I actually got a different one for my birthday, so it's going to look and sound a little bit different than the other machine that I was using, even though it's still a Brother. It's actually going to look quite a bit like it, except it's got a lot of extra buttons that my other one didn't have. And, oops, I turned my light off. And it makes some different noises. Okay, so I've got purple thread, which is not going to work because there's no purple in that Harry Potter fabric. I could use gold thread if I wanted to, or black if I wanted to blend it in. I don't know. What do y'all think? Should I use, let's see what kind of gold colored thread I have. See if I have some that will match. This is what I've got. I don't know that that really matches. So the other yellow I have is actually quite yellow. It's not really gold. Okay, so we'll go with the black then to blend. Or I could go with the navy blue, which, let's see. I don't know. The navy blue actually is kind of cool. I might, just to be different, I think I'll go with that one. I like to have some highlighted colors in things that I sew. Let's see. I'm trying to get my sewing foot, or the pedal, closer to where my foot's at. Okay. So we... trying to get this lowered and it's not. There we go. And tilted and closer. Alright, so I'm going to load up my navy blue thread in my machine. Wow, I'm not having as much room for my hand in here. Oops, and I'm knocking things on the floor. Seemed like I had a little more room with my other one with the camera. I'm going to have to shift this over just a little bit so I could get my hand in. Okay, and then to thread my machine from the top. Get that on there. Let's make sure I do this correctly because it works differently than my other one. So over this, I'm going to have to back this up just a little bit so I can get my thread in there. And let's see. That's the only thing I don't like, is this automatic threader does not work as well as my other one did. Let's see. Am I getting it lined up? I am very irritated with this new automatic threader. It's just does not. I feel like I end up. Shoot. Okay. Well, I guess I get to do it the old-fashioned way, which I'm not very good at that because I can't see as good. You'd think a newer machine would be better at this. Wow, I threaded it the first time. That's amazing. Okay. And it got wrapped around. Okay. And... okay. It barely pulled that thread out, did it? Didn't it? Erg. Come on. Pull it out. Just barely pokes it out of the top. There it goes. Alright. I'm going to have to cut off all that excess thread that I have. Alright. So, I'm going to keep that handy. Alrighty. So, for the strap here, you're going to want to, we're going to stitch all the way down this edge, and then we're going to turn around and stitch all the way down this edge. So this is going to be just a very straight stitch. Let's see here. Where's my other thread? I want to get it pulled over here. Okay. So I'm going to lower that, and let's see, what position do I have it in? I have it in the middle position. I'm going to move this over. I like lining it up with the side of the foot there. I'm going to see if I can move, if I can remember how to move this over. I think. No, that doesn't do it. I thought I could manually move it over. Oh well, I guess I'll just, for time reasons. I want to get this, you want it as close to this edge as possible. I want to do like a 1/4 an inch seam. Okay, so you always want to start with your needle in the fabric. And I'm going to move this up some so y'all can see a little bit better. And I'm going to back stitch to the end. And then we're going to go forward. And we're just sewing this side of the fabric down to hold it down in place, because this is where we had folded the fabric together. And then just for looks, we'll turn it around and we'll do a seam on the other side. You don't have to do that, but it kind of looks nice. Let's see. Oh, not as much. I haven't sewn as much as I thought I had. I was checking. Okay. Okay. Straightening my fabric out that's in my lap. Okay, I'm getting close to the end, so I'm going to slow down. And then you want to do some reversing. Okay. So we're going to take that out. And I'm going to cut off the threads on both ends. And I guess honestly, we really didn't have to reverse stitch on the ends, because we're going to be cutting this in half. And the ends of both of these are all going to be underneath other fabric, getting sewn down, so the stitching's not going to come loose. Alright, so I'm just flipping this over, and I'm just going to stitch down the other side of my fabric. Like I said, this part is not really a necessary thing to do unless you just kind of want to have a nice little seam on both sides. It's just really for looks. Because the other one was you needed to hold down your fabric. This is not something that you have to do. I'm so used to back stitching, I always back stitch. Alright. Just sewing down the other side. Let's see. Wow, this is taking a while. I think my sewing machine has a faster setting, but I didn't feel like switching over to it. You have to switch a switch on it. Okay. Alright, so there's that. And if you'll notice, the stitch length on mine are pretty small. That's okay on the straps, but I was just thinking once we start sewing the other parts together, I'm thinking that probably I need to make my stitch lengths a little bit longer, because the thicker your fabric, oh, thank you, Paula. The thicker the fabric is, probably the longer the stitch length works better. So I'm going to go ahead and move mine up to at least 3.5 to accommodate for the longer stitch that we're going to be doing on the rest of it. And I'm going to just back this up a little bit so I won't have to change a lot of things. Okay, so we've gotten, and see, they even got even closer to the edge of there, so you can get, and that's how close I actually even got off a little bit. I was a little bit wider on one side than the other, but that's actually on the side where I sewed it down. I think it's because I didn't quite fold everything straight, but that's okay. It didn't have to be perfect. But as you'll notice, I didn't do quite as small of a seam on the edge as they did. So you do what's comfortable for you whenever you're doing that. It really doesn't matter. Once you get this sewn, you're going to fold it exactly in half and then cut the end of it to make them both exactly the same length. So I'm going to do that real quick. Alright, so once we're done with that, we're going to, oh yeah, the easy part. I like this pattern because it's just so simple. We're going to take both sets of coordinating fabric and turn them where the wrong sides are facing each other, and we're going to sew down one side, across the bottom, and then down up the other side. And we're going to do that on both pieces. So that's the next step. And I gave those handouts to everybody. So figure out, this one's going to be a little bit harder to figure out what's my right side and wrong side. Really, it doesn't matter a whole lot, but I do notice there's a funny looking thing on one side of this. I think it, like a thread got pulled on that one. But you just want to make sure that you get this 13 and 13 inch by 14 inches sides lined up correctly. And I think I messed mine up. Let's see here. I think I got off on those a little bit. Man, the pattern on this one really messes with my eyes. Okay. So you get them lined up and you're going to use some pins. And I can't really tell by glancing at it what's my 14 and what's my, let's see here, 13 and a half. Okay, so that is my 14. I do have it laying correctly. That's good. Because that doesn't have writing on it like my other one did. Okay, so this is going to be my bottom. So you're just going to pin those in place where you're going to be sewing. Once your edges are lined up. And that's why I said this is a great project for beginners. So if you don't get all your fabric cut exactly correct, it's not a deal breaker with this project. As long as you get it pretty well lined up, you're good. As long as it's not way off on the measurements, then you'll be okay. Because you can do like a 1/2 inch seam allowance and be good with this. If you got your measurements pretty well done correctly, then you could do a 1/4 of an inch and you shouldn't have any problems. But if you didn't do a real great job of measuring it and your sides are not real straight, then just do a 1/2 inch. It'll make the bag a little bit smaller, about 1 inch. Well, overall 1/2 inch all the way around. But that's not, for a beginner's project, that's not a big deal. Because you'll get a feel for what it's like to do it, and then you'll feel better about the next time that you go to make the project, and you'll have a much better success at it. And this is one of those that you will, I don't know, I found that I liked making this particular bag. It was a fun project to make, and I actually made quite a few bags for people with this particular pattern. Okay, my Harry Potter fabric, I have them laying on top of each other, so I got to turn these around where the right sides are facing each other. And I'm going to line, I'm holding this up in the air so I can get them lined up. So when I lay them down, they're facing each other. Okay, so I need some more pins. And with this one, it makes a lot better deal about what direction you're going, because I want this to be the top. So I need to make sure that these are going the right direction when I'm pinning them. You don't want to mess that up. Oops. Ha! Just hit the camera there. Sorry about that. Alright, so I'm going to need some more pins. And I'm just pinning the areas where I'm going to be sewing so I won't get terribly confused and accidentally sew the top of my project, which I do not want to do that. I just want to, because that would sew it closed, and that would not be good. Alright, so I need about 3 more pins for the other side. Oh, I grabbed 4. Oh well. I'll use 4 pins. It doesn't matter. Okay. Alright, so I got both of them pinned. I'm going to lay both of them over here. I'm going to move this out of the way. Alright. And so, I didn't want to move this too much so I wouldn't be moving back and forth too much. Alright, so now we're going to be sewing the sides. So, and the color of the thread's not a big deal on this, because even though it's navy and this is black and kind of a brownish color, actually looks kind of gold on camera, but you're not going to see this because this is an inside seam that you're doing, so it's not going to be visible. So I'm going to push that under there just a little ways, and I'm lining it up with the edge of my fabric because I want to have, this is going to be more than a 1/4 of an inch. This is going to be like a 2/3 inch seam on it. If If I wanted to do the 1/4 of an inch, then I would move it over to, let's see, I don't think y'all can see that very well. Turn that down. See if I can scoot it forward. So you can kind of see through this sewing foot a little bit. This is a clear piece. I'm sewing it up with this edge right here. And if you can't see it right now, but back here it shows that that's a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance right there. So I'm going to start with my needle in my fabric, and then I have this right next to it, so I'm having to hold this down. I'm going to do a back stitch, and then I'm going to go forward. Actually, I'm going to see if I can turn up the speed of this and sew a little bit faster this time. Let me move some things out of the way. Except I'm going to end up sewing over that needle. I'll definitely need to back this up just a tiny bit. Let's see if I can get my hands in here without messing anything up. Okay. Yeah, that's faster. Yay. Except I'm going to keep hitting the camera. Let me move this over so maybe I won't do that as much. Can I make this? Maybe I could set it up here. That might work. I'm still gonna bump it. Okay. And my lower fabric sticks out further than my upper fabric. No, I'm actually keeping it lined up with the upper fabric here. Okay. And let's see. I'm trying to think. If I go one more stitch, I don't want to get too close to the bottom, so I'm going to turn here. I think that's a little more than a, yeah, it's a little more than a 1/4. Let's see if I can go forward one more stitch. Okay, that's closer. I don't want to have a hole in my bag, but I want to get it close to a 1/4 of an inch. And never push your fabric through, just guide it through, because the machine is doing all of the pulling of the fabric for you. It may end up bunching up on you if you push it through. I'm going to have to tilt, because my hand keeps getting, I'm just not real crazy about this angle here. Maybe if I make it a little bit higher and tilt it down, maybe my hands will be out of the way. Okay, and I want to make sure, did I line that up? Okay, not too bad. Okay, I went a little too far, so I'm going to reverse. Okay. And then it decided to get a little, this fabric got kind of pushed down in there, didn't it? Okay, we're almost to the top here. I'm going to do some reverse stitching. This fabric is getting hung up under there. Bunched up together. I'm just going to leave it be. It's going to get sewn over again. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about it too much. That edge is going to get folded over and stuff, so I just don't want it to get bunched up underneath my needle there, so I'm going to just not worry about the double or back stitching on that one. Okay. Alright, so now we need to do our other piece. We're going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be doing the sides and the bottom, but not the top. We're not going to sew the top. Okay. And I'm lining it up with the top. Oh, whoops. Let me flip this over because my needles are on the other side. And that will make it difficult pulling my needles out if I have them on the wrong side. Okay. Turn on my corner here. And if you're new to sewing, you'll notice when I'm doing my corners that before I turn my fabric, I make sure that my needle is in my fabric, because you don't ever want the needle to be up when you're turning your fabric, otherwise it'll shift on you. And you don't ever want to sew over your needles that's in your fabric, because that could break the needle on your machine. Let's see, am I close enough to my edge? Let's see. Maybe one more. Okay. All right. Oops. And there's one of my other needles. Gotta get them out of the way. If it hit the plastic, it wouldn't break, but if it hit the metal part, it would break your needle. Seems like the fabric was trying to get a little bit shifted on me there. Okay. Alright, so we came back around to the top. And like I said, I'm cutting the extra threads off the sides there too. Alright, so we're going to box. Oh, you like the fabric? Oh, I'm not noticing the messages that you're typing until probably much later. But thank you about the fabric. Oh, there goes my camera. It's like I'm going to fall down now. Alright, so there's that one. And I sewed all the edges except for the top. I left that open. So we sewed down, across, and then up. And then on our other piece of fabric, it's the same. I got an opening here, but I sewed down and across the bottom and then up the side. So that's that. And then we have our straps too. So the next thing that we're going to be doing is boxing our corners, which is the bottom of the bag. So what you're going to do here is you're going to need something to measure with, and I'm looking around to see what I got here. So I'm just going to, let's see, that one's going to, the light's going to reflect a lot. I'm not sure if y'all are going to be able to see that. me try. Let's see if that one's too small. No, maybe not. I'm trying to think of what's going to show up. These might show up. Alright, we're going to be measuring our bottom. So, you're going to take, this is probably the hardest part of this entire project, which this is not a big deal. So we're going to be boxing these corners, these two corners and the two corner on this one. I'm going to do the Harry Potter fabric first, because it's going to be easier to see than this one. But we're going to do this same thing to both. Okay, so here's one of my corners. And I think I'm going to tilt my camera to get as close as possible while I'm doing this, so you guys can see it. And you're going to stick your hand in the opening here to help you get to the corner, to pull it apart. And you will need a water-soluble pen for this part. Okay, so we're going to pull apart the corner, and this is the bottom edge of my fabric right now. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that this seam and this seam are laying on top of each other. Okay, I'm going to kind of fold it this direction, and I'm going to fill and make sure that they are lined up with one another, and make sure that that seam and this seam is lined up on top of, I can actually feel that they're sitting on top of each other. Okay. Once you got that, you're going to need to use something that's will measure for you, and you're going to want to measure, and it depends on how wide you want this to be. She says to measure about 1.5 inches from the top here. So this is 1 inch to 2 inches here. So if you do 1.5 inches, it's going to be kind of hard to see on here, my halfway mark. And you're measuring from where the seam is, not where this point is at. So up to here is 1 inch. And then up to this little mark right here is my half mark. So I've got the top of where my seam, where my fabric is, there. And so I'm going to take my marker here and going to mark a little dot right there, so I know where my 1.5 inch mark is. Well, actually, I'm going to draw across this. I need to lay it down flat. Okay, so there's my little dot, which you probably can't see. I'm going to try to get a little bit closer, and hopefully this will stop falling forward if I can tighten it up a little bit. Okay, so, and I probably need something a little bit longer. That's not a straight enough edge. Okay, so these are the, let me move the fabric out of the way. This is going to be so hard for you guys to see. Alright, so I want to mark across, straight across here, because that's my halfway mark here, and you want a straight edge on that. Let's see here, and there's my little blue dot right there, and you want this straight. So I'm trying to eyeball this. That's like a halfway mark, and that's a halfway mark. I guess that's not very good. Let's see, to show y'all how that works. Okay, so that's 1 inch, 2 inch, and 3 inches. So across, that's going to be a 3 inch area. So that's how you're going to make sure that you've got it straight. Because if you have it tilted, it wouldn't quite measure correctly, but you want it to be exact. And this one's got a nice little mark on this here that'll help you see that that is exactly across there. So we're going to mark with your marker across, which I think I marked way down further than I meant to because I had my pen tilted. Okay, yeah, my first mark wasn't quite right. So you're going to sew across that area right there whenever we're sewing this. So I'm going to take one of my pens And I'm going to pin my fabric in place here on this side of my mark, and then I'm also going to pin it on this side. I want to make sure that this fabric does not shift any, so when I get to go sewing across it, it'll stay in place. So now I'm going to take and flip this around to my other corner that's directly across from it. I'm going to pull it apart again. So this is the bottom of the bag, and this is the side edge of the bag. And we're going to find our point again. And we're going to go all the way to the point for this. And we're going to line up our seams on both sides and make sure they are laying on top of each other again. So my seams, this seam on this side and this seam on this side need to be on top of each other, and you can feel it by the way it's just, and if you have to, you can always turn it this way to kind of see if it's all lining up like it's supposed to. Okay. Alright, and I can feel that that's lined up there. And I'm going to get my little measuring tool here, and I'm going to measure the same way that I did on the other one. And it's from this point here to down here, so that's 1 inch. And then I want the 1/2 inch, so this will be my 1.5 inch mark right here. Alright, and so I'll take this and flatten it across. Make sure that it's straight across, and then I will mark it straight across like so. And then I'm going to pin it in place. On both sides. And before you get sewing, you can always take one of these pins out once you've got it underneath your sewing foot. So I've got that pinned in place. And now I'm going to take my other fabric, which this one will be harder to see, but I'm doing the exact same thing. I might have to lift this up a little bit so I can have enough space to do this. I was trying to get far enough away so y'all could see. Alright, so this is my side edge and this is my bottom edge. And so I'm going to pull my fabric apart, and then I'm going to lay this down where this is the bottom edge and that's the side edge. And we're going to pull it apart again, or pull this one apart now. And we're going to do the exact same thing. Make sure that your seams, that you can feel them laying on top of each other. And I'm going to get this to measure 1.5 inches from the top. The bigger you want your box to be, the bottom of it, then of course you're going to come inwards further to mark this. This is only going to give you a very small boxed bottom to it. And I'll show you from the other one what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about, a boxed corner. That's how wide the bottom is. If you had measured, you can see this one right here, that is 1/2 inch, 1.5 inches boxed. So that's what we're doing on this one. So if you want a wider one, then you can measure it out to 2 inches. If you want the bottom to be 2 inches wide, you could, or you could do even bigger, 4 inches, 5 inches. It just all depends on how wide of a bottom of the bag that you want it to be. That's why I like this project, because it's very versatile as far as being able to change it up if you want to, have either bigger straps or a wider bottom to it. you can do those things with this very easily. Okay, trying to make sure my seams are lining up like they're supposed to. Okay, so hope this shows up just as well. Okay, so that's 1 inch, and this is the halfway mark. And it looks like it's going to show up. Make sure I pulled it out like I wanted to, and it's got the seams laying. That's, like I said, that's really the hardest part, is just making sure all of your stuff is laying on top of each other like it's supposed to. Okay. Alrighty. Alright, so alright, so there's that one, and I'm going to get some pins to pin the top half in place and the bottom in place. And now I'm going to turn around to my other corner, and this is my bottom edge and that's my side edge. Okay, let's see here. We're going to the corner again, pulling our seams apart. Alrighty. Feels like that's about right. Gonna measure and line that up with my seam. That's 1 inch, and this is my 1.5 inch mark, which is gonna be kind of hard to see because it's in that black area. I'll try to mark it. Okay, and then we're gonna take this straight edge and line it up across. Hope I'll be able to see it since it's kind of lining up with the darker color instead of the lighter color. Okay. And a couple of pins. I don't know if y'all can, the lighting, if y'all can even see. It looks too dark on my screen, but I notice sometimes when it looks too dark on my screen, when I look at it later on online, it's not as dark as it looked to me. Okay. So, I'll put those out of the way, because we're just going to sew across our corners. Alright, so we're going to tilt this back up. Wish we had to tighten it quite a bit earlier. Oh, there we go. I'm going to move back over here and move that down and try to get this close enough where y'all can see it. Okay, so, and again, it doesn't matter what color thread we're using right now because this is all on the inside of the bag, so it's not going to be seen. Pull my thread over, and you want to line this up with your sewing needle. So I'm trying to eyeball this where that's exactly where it's supposed to be. Yep, it's falling right where it's supposed to. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of back stitching, and then I'm going to go forward, because this one, if I do too much back stitching with this fabric, it looks like it kind of gets caught up underneath my machine here. And I'm going in the direction of the seam, how I have the seam pushed. It's pushed this direction. That kind of helps it from pushing it the wrong way for you. In this part, you probably do want to sew a little bit slow to make sure you keep it straight. And I'm going to back stitch. And I back stitched more than I normally do since this fabric wants to kind of bunch up. And I'm going to sew forward. Alright, so that one's done. Cut off the excess threads, and we're just going to sew down all of these corners that we just marked. Make sure that it flattens out nice and neat and get it lined up. Okay. I'm not going to go to the very edge of my fabric since it tends to get kind of caught up under my machine there. Okay. Cut off the threads, pull out my needles, and where's the other threads? Cut those off. Alright, so now we're going to do the other corners. So we're doing a lot of this multiple times because we're making both of them the same. My fabric, Harry Potter fabric, was not wanting to stay flat. Okay, so there's that one. And get the needles pulled out and the thread cut off again. We got one corner left, and then I'll show you how to put this all together. Let's see, is that lined up? Yep. Alright, that's my last corner.